very, very good evening, Sunday, 24th of November 2024. My name is Raj Amir. This is one of those weekly Recusant 9 transmissions. Unfortunately, the transmissions have now reverted to subscriber only in the way we set out at September time. I'd hoped that by putting them out free to air, our numbers would increase. We'd also generate some much needed income to keep the transmissions going, the broadcast going, the work continuing. Unfortunately, it hasn't happened that way, and I'm disappointed with myself really for even trying. We've tried this before where we put out free content, and in the end it's never worked. So I was naive in thinking perhaps this time would be different. I think those of you who've been around me long enough will remember a couple of years ago, I think before we got the Royton Independents in, we were building up to getting them in. Remember the amount of work we put in to get them in, to the point where I was arrested in the lead up to the election. The police came in and arrested me to try and stop me campaigning. Said as much to my solicitor at the police station somewhere near Manchester, I think it was. They took me to that time and would put the content out to the point where we were saying, okay, just sign up for £1. We had a special scheme where £1 gets you everything, and it didn't even happen then. So the chances of us getting somewhere this time, I think, is difficult. But nonetheless, those of us who are here, and I just wanted to share something with you. I wanted to share something with you because people need to understand that the way in which we're fighting in this town and continuing to raise awareness of the issues in this town with an outside world. Well, have a look for yourself. This was a reply I put out to Keir Starmer. Just wanted to send something out to say, there you go, Starmer, we've not left, we're still here. And you can see for yourself what happened. 115,000 people viewed the tweet, and I need you to look at the tweet because there's two elements to it. One is, of course, to do with the Pakistani rape gangs and how many members did the CPS fail to prosecute. I'm one of the very few people who still continue to refer to these rape gangs with the ethnicity attached, because that's what they were in the main, and I think it's important, and I've continued to advocate that these were racially motivated crimes and should have been investigated as racially motivated crimes, recorded as racially motivated crimes, and I've been called a racist for that, but that's by the by. The second element is this: why is it that once you became Prime Minister, your government refused an official request from Oldham Council to launch a public inquiry into the now confirmed systematic gang rape of little white girls in Oldham? 115,000 people and rising across the country in the main. My supporters, my audience on Twitter, X, isn't a global audience. In fact, I have a small audience really on Twitter, but there you go, 115,000. Now, if I'm not continuing to do this and raise awareness of what's happening in this town, because without raising awareness to the outside world of what's happening in this town, we can't put pressure on the government locally, nationally, the authorities to fix what is happening in this town. So people have contacted me and said, what's the point? Well, 115,000 people who otherwise wouldn't know is the point, or one of the many points. So that's what I wanted to bring to your attention first. Secondly, before I forget, and I should have done this last week, so my apologies, our annual Christmas meal is booked. I'm not sure if Tony's away, so sorry Tony, I can shift it if you are away, but it's booked provisionally for the 3rd, Tuesday the 3rd of December at the Milan. They've took care of us every year. I book out that section, and if you, I'd love for as many of you as possible who are able to join me. It'll be at 7 o'clock at the Mill on Tuesday the 3rd, and I think how much is it? I think it's £20 or so. But it's a chance once in a year for all of us to get together. The space is booked for about 30 people. Hopefully we can fill it. So if you are free and you are available, just please drop me a message and say you'd like to come and how many of you are coming, and I'd very much like to see you. Excuse me. I've not been well. I think I shared with you. I've not been well. I've just not been able to shift this. And indeed, Gary, and that's why we're one of the reasons we're off Facebook completely now. I mean, all I do is post stuff forwarding, asking people to go and read the content either on Patreon or YouTube or Redwall and the Rabble. That's why. Well, if you're out, Denise, then I'll shift it to the 10th. If all three of you are, it's my fault, sorry, I should have said. So I will shift it to the 10th. So please, if you're free on Tuesday the 10th of December, it would be lovely to see all of you. I'm not sure if we'll get to next Christmas, if I'm honest with you. So let's see what happens. So Tuesday the 10th, I've got to go to the Milan and change the date, but that's an excuse for me to go and nibble on a samosa and chat to the lads there. So that's no hardship at all. So Tuesday the 10th of December. Okay. I rarely do national stuff, but I think it's important I do national stuff because a few of you have sent me the link of that petition to sign. So there's this petition, and you can see it's churning away, and it's fast approaching 2 million signatures. And I know a few of you excited by it, and sure you should be. Let me talk to you about what this petition is really about and where we go with it. So I would like there to be another general election. I believe the current Labour government has gone back on the promises they laid out in the lead up to the last election, and that's as simple as that. As simple as that is what Michael Westwood put out. Okay. The petition is really about, not really about wanting a general election. It doesn't really stop there, does it? The petition is about calling out a government that got elected on a series of manifesto pledges, and within days, weeks, months, they have broken pledge after pledge after pledge. So it goes to the heart of our democratic system. People get elected based on pledges published in a manifesto, and there is an expectation that those who get elected try their best. Not all pledges can be seen through, of course, we understand that, but try their best to stick to their word and deliver on their manifesto pledges, and this time as Labour government clearly hasn't. So what and where do we go from here? Now, I don't buy that, Gary. I don't buy that. We know they won't, but it's the embarrassment for them now. There are people across this country who increasingly are not buying into the democratic process. They don't go out and vote, they pay no interest, and those numbers are increasing. And what we find out is that people who disengage in the democratic process, who stop voting, more than that, don't go back to vote. And that is causing a crisis in this country. So there are people who are signing this not to cause the government embarrassment, not to make a point, but there are people signing this genuinely believing it will make a difference. And when it doesn't make a difference, then it will be another reason why they disengage in democracy, because they'll say, what's the point? What's the point of protesting? What's the point of writing to your MP? What's the point of signing a petition? All of these are mechanisms through which our democracy functions. Now, I've had a look and I saw of the opposition leaders, I think it was only Nigel Farage who put out a video commenting on it, but no one has gone to the effort of explaining to you what this petition means and what you can actually do, what MPs can actually do if they were interested. If they were genuinely interested, there are 9 things that MPs can actually do, and I wanted to share those 9 things with you, Shane, for no other reason than that. So he says, trying to bring his computer back on. 1, there's something called Opposition Day debates. And what Opposition Day debates are is that opposition parties are allocated specific days in the parliamentary year to set the agenda in Parliament. And they can debate and bring a debate focusing on pressing issues, forcing the government to respond. So if the Conservatives or the Liberal Democrats or Reform were genuinely interested, opposition, they could have an Opposition Day debate. They could use some of the time allocated to them to have a debate on this issue of not a general election, but something more pressing. And that would be about recalling Parliament. Recalling, it can be a general election. It's basically a recall. And the recall is if the manifesto pledges are broke, then you can't vote on a general election. Or if you're wanting something to be law, you'd say, if X percentage of voters declare no confidence in the government, then a general election should be called, however. Because that's what we're saying. That's what we're really saying here, is that what happens when people have no trust in those who lead us. Now, we know the first option, they'll never win because of the majority Labour have. But the second option of actual real democracy, if enough people say, no, we've had enough, this government is not fit for purpose, it's refused to do what it said, it's exploited us, it's lied to us, it's deceived us, we want a new general election. And that's what an Opposition Day debate could be. And they'd have to vote on it. And of course they might lose, but they'd have to vote on it, and you'd see how many of the Conservatives, how many of the Liberal Democrats, how many of the opposition MPs are actually willing to give up their power, because that's what they are here. How many of them are willing to give up their power for that? Separate to an Opposition Day debate is something called private members' bills. Let me give you the example first of all. So an Opposition Day debate, November 29, Labour used the Opposition Day to debate a motion to ban fracking. The government abstained, but it increased political pressure to reconsider the government's policy. That's what happened. So yes, it's about raising awareness. Yes, it's about putting pressure. But a petition on its own will not be enough. What I'm trying to say to you is the MPs, the opposition MPs, now have to use this. Or they're just using you and me and the 2 million, just under 2 million who've signed this petition so far. The second one is something called a private members bill. MPs can vote, MPs can propose legislation through private members bills. Introduced via ballot, 10-minute rules, there's these 10-minute debates, or a presentation. Private members bills, they highlight specific issues, such as the absence of trust in the government, or any government. 2018, Stella Creasy sought to classify misogyny as a hate crime. It sparked national discussions on hate crime. Can you get elected on a lie? And if you do, should you be held accountable? That's what a private members bill should focus on. There's something called early day motions, and an early day motion is where MPs table early day motions to raise awareness, to show support for issues. Whilst rarely debated, so these aren't really debated, they can attract signatures and generate attention. So how many MPs will sign that? In 2020, an early day motion highlighted the contribution of NHS workers during COVID-19, prompting broader debates on funding and welfare. Number 4, and Jim McMahon and Debbie Abrams used this against me, if you remember, just after the CSE report came out proving everything we said was true. They tried to call us far right, your MPs, our MPs. It's called an adjournment debate. Basically, it takes place at the end of the parliamentary day, opposite to the early day motion, and allows MPs to discuss specific issues with ministers. So there's a discussion with the adjournment debates that the early day motions don't really have. They do not result in an immediate vote, but can raise awareness. And an adjournment debate was used just a couple of years ago regarding the 2-child benefit limit, which Labour promised to get rid of and now aren't getting rid of, remember? You've got urgent questions. MPs can request the Speaker to allow urgent questions on pressing matters. I'd consider 2 million people signing a petition. And in September 29, MPs used an urgent question to challenge the government's suspension of Parliament during the Brexit crisis. There's petitions, which this is. Petitions signed by 100,000 people can lead to a parliamentary debate. MPs can also present petitions on behalf of constituents. MPs can also present petitions on behalf of constituents. Remember that. Because we can, now that the government has knocked back a call for a public inquiry into the gang rape of our town children, we can submit a petition and get McMahon to submit the petition to the government. He has no say in it. We can get that happen. We can go through a process where that can be done. And in terms of the petition, and we think 2 million's a lot. Sorry, Louise, is it 1,600,000? I'm just generalising and rounding up. Louise, I think it'll be at 2 million by the time we wake up to tomorrow. And whilst we think 2 million's a lot, the Brexit vote, the Article 50, where they wanted to revoke the Brexit vote and have a second referendum or something. How many people signed that? Over 6 million people signed that. Got them nowhere, but over 6 million signed that. Because a petition and debate on its own isn't enough. You need your MPs and you need the elected officials to take the mandate that they've been given and do something with it. Otherwise, it's just theatre, isn't it? It's just theatre. It's only 100,000. They passed the limit a long time ago. For the CSE. Well, to have it debated at a local council, I think we needed something like 4,000 or 5,000. But for national, we can just, it's whatever it is. You contact your MP to take the petition in. If he refuses, it's not a good look at all. The government has a whole host of select committees. The cross-party, what's happened now? The Home Affairs Select Committee is one of the strongest. Committees scrutinise government actions and publish reports that can lead to debates and votes in Parliament. So the Home Affairs Select Committee could pick this up, or another select committee could pick this up. In 2021, the Public Accounts Committee reported on COVID-19 contracts, leading to a Commons debate on transparency, and you've seen what's gone on since. So that's all originated from a select committee. You can have amendments, just like we see them at a council level, amendments to government bills. So MPs, opposition MPs, can propose changes to government legislation. And that happens all the time. In 2020, the Labour Party proposed, because they were in opposition at the time, an amendment to something called a trade bill to protect the NHS from trade deals. And of course, there is the Backbench Business Committee. MPs, basically that means backbench MPs can request debates on issues not covered by the government's agenda, which this isn't. Debates may or may not lead to votes, but bring attention to key issues. So, as far back in 2017, remember the WASPI women A debate on WASPy women pension age changes, which was to do with, was scheduled, keeping the issue in the public eye despite the motion being non-binding. So what you've got is 9 ways in which your MP, any MP, opposition MP, can pick this up and run with it. And if they don't pick it up and run with it, well, they're playing games with you, aren't they? They're playing games with you. The ability to recall MPs, Ian, came about during the time of David Cameron after some scandal. I think it was some expensive scandal or something. And all of that was shared in the public domain, that you and me could vote and recall our MPs if they'd done something wrong. By the time it passed legislation, it was so watered down, it's impossible to recall an MP, or as good as impossible. They've got to committed a crime, they've got to do this, you've got to get that many votes, not of people who voted, but the electorate. If you're a football fan, those add-on clauses, and some of them are like, you've got to win the league 5 years in a row and be top scorer in each season and win the Ballon d'Or, whatever it's called, at least 3 times. It's that sort of impossibility. So now you can't really recall your MP anymore by a petition, although that was the purpose of what you could do. But what I wanted to raise with you was that, and just keep your eyes open. I've signed it, you've signed it, I'm sure more than we've just signed it, but keep your eyes open to see if any of the opposition MPs, particularly the opposition leaders, have got the genuine conviction to support the millions of people who believe they've been lied to by our leaders, and this lying needs to stop. Getting elected on a manifesto of lies is more damaging to democracy than anything else, in my opinion. Local elections, Paul, there are no local elections in 2025. It's a gap here. The next local elections are in May. Now, I wanted to start on the national issue, not just because it's in the public interest at the moment, it's high on the agenda at the moment, it's on people's minds. I wanted to raise it because I wanted to talk about what people can do, what politicians can do, what MPs can do, and move that to a local issue that we have, which is places for everyone. What we've got is a situation where the Labour Party lost a vote, a very important vote, which should have meant that the Chief Executive write to the Secretary of State requesting that Oldham withdraw from places for everyone. And irrespective of what the likes of Luke Lancaster claim, such a letter requesting withdrawal cannot be easily dismissed, because the government, who are committed to a localism agenda, getting involved in something like this and saying no you can't, opens the government up to judicial review that the council would have to then take forward. Not your money, my money, the council's money, our money, collective money, and it would cause them a headache, and I believe they would lose. So what took place after losing that vote was that an unnamed council source briefed the media to say, the council funded local media, to say that their vote doesn't count. There's something in the wording, some small print, the vote doesn't count, and there'll have to be another vote. Now, what I wanted to raise with you, and I've been lobbying for, well, if that's what they've said, it was up to Howard Sykes, the leader of the opposition. Let me bring this back up so you can see what I mean. I can write this whilst I'm talking to you. So we have Howard Sykes. And what he should have done was, 1, issue a statement. He hasn't. 2, hold an extraordinary council meeting. You need 5 councillors to do that. He's got more than 5. He hasn't. 3, he should have met with other opposition party leaders. He hasn't. Not really. Now, why am I picking Howard Sykes and the Lib Dems? 1, it was their motion. But 2, the Liberal Democrats, Howard Sykes, when they moved for the leadership, when they wanted to run Oldham Council, Places for Everyone, and the withdrawal from Places for Everyone was the number 1 manifesto pledge. It's not a manifesto as such, but you understand. It was the number 1 pledge. Go and have a look at the documents. You will see that the Lib Dem number 1 pledge was withdrawing from Places for Everyone. So they tried to take over the council from Arud Shah, remember? When they got an alliance together of Sheldon, Gaffer, the Royton Independents, the Failsworth Alternative Independents, that rainbow sort of coalition. Number 1 was the Places for Everyone. Howard Sykes, Lib Dem's key priority. And now they get a vote over the line that delivers that, or should deliver that. It's gone all quiet after the council double-dealed and said the vote doesn't count. He should have issued a statement to the public. He hasn't. He should have liaised and met with opposition party leaders to agree a course of action. He hasn't. I know opposition party leaders or opposition councillors have been in touch with him, but he hasn't instigated that. And of course he should have called an extraordinary council meeting. He hasn't. So what's he playing at? Was he playing you all along? Were the Lib Dems playing people all along? Well, I have gone away and I've asked and I've put together what I've been able to put together, so I'll share it with you now. There are Liberal Democrats who secretly don't support withdrawing from places for everyone. They simply voted with their party because they believed that they would lose the vote. And now they've won the vote, they never wanted to win the vote anyway. So that level of double dealing, hypocrisy, is going to damage them. Now I don't know who's going to win, who's going to pick up the pieces, but it's going to damage them. I genuinely believe if Howard Sykes doesn't call for an extraordinary council meeting, he will lose his seat. Secondly, those of you who've asked me about political blackmail, no, there is no political blackmail on Howard Sykes on this. It's from his own party, is my analysis. He can't get a consensus on his own councillors. Remember, the Liberal Democrats, up to the last council meeting, the extraordinary council meeting that Lewis Quigg forced, had always voted on issues together. They were a tight, compact unit, consistent, well organised, effective. Howard Sykes sat in a meeting with Arud Shah and supported Harry Cafferel going to Tameside whilst maintaining 1 day a week at Oldham, where he earned £40,000. That's Howard Sykes' decision. Howard Sykes also approved the dodgy appointment of Shelley Kipling. The consequence of that, and this isn't me getting at him, the consequence of that is that at the vote, the Liberal Democrats were torn 3 ways. There's only Sam Al-Hamdani and Garth Harkness that voted with him. I think what I recall, Dan Williamson and Dave Murphy abstained. And then you had Bishop, I think Ellis, is it Marland, also abstained. And then you had at least two councillors that outright voted, 3 councillors that outright voted against him. I think Louis Hamlet voted against him, Helen Bishop and Steve Kenyon. That's never happened with the Lib Dems before. And because that had never happened with the Lib Dems before, I've been speaking to other councillors, independent, Conservatives, opposition, whatever, combination. And they reached out to Howard Sykes and said, you don't need your full party on this for the extraordinary council meeting. This isn't just about PFE either. It's bigger than PFE. It's about governance of the town. It's about the very foundations of democracy in this town. Because if they undermine one of us today, will we win a vote, then what's the point? They'll undermine all of us. What's the point? And I know opposition leaders were willing, because you need 5 signatories, and you could have got 5 signatories from all the opposition leaders, the main ones. So Graham Sheldon would have signed it, calling for the extraordinary council meeting. So the 5 signatures we need, here you go, Mr. Mayor, says Howard Sykes, here you go. It's supported by Graham Sheldon. It's supported by Cameron Gaffer, who hates the Labour Party, so he's happy to support that. It's supported by Maggie Hurley from the Right and Independents. Is supported by Mark Wilkinson from the Failsworth Alternatives. Here's our 5. Because these were the 5 who were forming or supportive of Howard Sykes becoming leader of the council on a mandate where his number 1 priority was withdrawal from places for everyone. And even with that support, Howard Sykes hasn't moved forward. Now maybe Howard Sykes believes that he can get to a second vote, the motion. My understanding of the council's constitution, and I like to think my understanding of the council's constitution is of a sufficient level, is that you can't bring another motion, the same motion back within a 6-month period. It's brought forward in June, July, and you can't bring the motion back at December. There might be a workaround that Howard knows about, but my understanding of the council motion in simplest terms is he can't. And what will happen is a week before the council meeting, when the Lib Dems put forward a motion on this, the borough solicitor, Alexander Bogatoff, will smile and reject it, and that'll be checkmate there. Because if it comes in February or whenever it is, it's too late. It's another. The longer we leave it, the more the cement of places for everyone sets, and the difficulty, more unlikely it becomes for us to extract from it. But say Howard Sykes manages to get some sort of vote in December. Do you think these opposition councillors will support him? I don't. I don't believe, and it is my position as well, that these opposition councillors should not be forced to vote on something they've already voted on. And I believe what will happen is a mass walkout from the council chamber of Conservatives, of Oldham Group, of Independents, from Royton and from Failsworth. You'll see a mass walkout because they can't allow themselves to vote again on something they've already voted on, because it sets a dangerous precedent of the council bureaucrats interfering whenever it doesn't go their way, forcing elected representatives to vote again and vote again and vote again. So these opposition councillors won't vote with Howard Sykes if he just sits on his hands and waits for another meeting, waits to try and incorporate it into the council meeting in December. I don't understand, Gary. Even with direct emails to his councillors asking if they'll support, has that happened? When an extraordinary council meeting is called, it's got to be called within 7 days. And it needs to be an extraordinary council meeting, otherwise it gets lost. And that extraordinary council meeting, the motion, has got to be worded in such a way where it's clear that it's the elected representatives who vote and the officers who do as they're told as a consequence of the vote. And it seems Howard Sykes isn't willing or capable or able. So there we have it. That's what's gone on, and it's entirely on Howard Sykes. Opposition leaders have contacted him, willing to support an extraordinary council meeting and then voting with him in an extraordinary council meeting, making sure that democracy is upheld in this town. And no, it is not for the other opposition leaders to call for an extraordinary council meeting on this issue. It is for Howard Sykes for 3 reasons. 1, he is the leader of the opposition. 2, the Liberal Democrats attempted to lead a coalition in this town where Howard Sykes would be appointed leader that stood on a platform of withdrawing from Places for Everyone. And the 3rd reason, it was Howard Sykes' motion in the first place. No one else should be doing the heavy lifting here. It has to be him. And if it isn't him, then I don't just think he'll have lost control, or he's lost control of the Liberal Democrats. I think he'll lose his seat. There's no coming back from this. I'd ask him outright. I'd ask him publicly. Ask him on Twitter. Ask him on Facebook. Do you know what's going on? You now know what's going on. You know why they're not answering. Because, 1, some of them, it's my information, some of them actually only voted thinking they'd lose. They were exploiting the very people that they were representing. Shocking, isn't it? So that's what's taken place there. I'll keep you all updated during the week on this, and we'll see how it goes, but I'll keep you all updated. And for those of you joining me now, please, there's a Christmas meal on the 10th, Tuesday the 10th, 7 o'clock. Drop me a message. It's at the Milan. I'd love to see you once a year where we share a meal together. I actually value it. I genuinely value it. It gives me some strength and some energy, because there's nothing other than the sharing of some food and just chatting to people whose names I just see on a screen pop up. So if you're free, it'd be good to see you. I'll keep you updated. If I hear anything, I'll put it on Patreon. You'll know. Andy Burnham is coming to Oldham. He's got a community question time, one of those question times with the mayor in Oldham. You can book on it. You should book on it, and you should attend. There's 38 of you watching now. If 30 of you attended and we coordinated our response, it would make the national news. We'd go in prepared with a whole host of questions. We'd be ready for his responses and his attempts to wiggle, and we'd humiliate him in Oldham, like we've humiliated him before. This is live streamed because it's his event across all of Greater Manchester, and it will be made onto the national news. Again, it's on a Thursday. I think it's Thursday I'll bring it up and say it yet. Mayor question time, 12th of December. So it's a couple of days after the meal. I think that's why we went for the meal earlier on that week. I didn't want to tie some of you down twice. Doors open at 7 for a 7:30 start. It's at the old Sainsbury's site, the school there, Brian Clark Church of England Academy. It's free. You can just reserve a spot. You can ask questions. You can turn up with placards. We can humiliate him. We can expose him on a whole host of issues. If there is interest, and I'd need at least 20 people, if there is interest, I am more than happy to go with you. I'm more than happy to help prepare the questions and do to Andy Burnham what we've done to him before. But you know what it takes? It takes courage. It's easy typing away, looking a man in the eye and asking him something he doesn't want to answer and making him feel uncomfortable, exposing his duplicity. His double dealing, his deceit. Takes courage. It's the 12th, Louise. So we had the meal on the 10th and then it's the 12th. Thank you, Gary. Gary's just reserved a place, so that's one. I'll wait here, see if anyone else clicks and says, well, I've reserved a place. I went last time. I was on police bail at the time. The police stopped me outside and spoke to me. I sat next to Julie Hayward. She went. Peter went. Lewis Quigg was there. Gary drove me there and drove me back with his dog in the back, worried about me. Because at that point, these people were genuinely trying to do me a lot of harm. And I went. And I sat there and I stared him out. And then we defeated Arood Shah and Chadderton South. You do more than enough, Louise. You come from a long way away anyway. You do more than enough. But there are other people here who live in the town who can walk there and walk home afterwards. If there's 20 of you, if you book on it, let me know. Drop me a message and say, Raj, I booked on it. And I'll run a workshop. I'll prep questions. I'll do all of that. And we'll go in as a campaign, as a campaigning group with the placards like we had for the extraordinary council meeting when he attended. Made global news. Took me an hour to do, just printing out. I'm just looking at my printer behind me. All I had to do was buy some ink and some thicker paper, some cards. Or we can just be rabble and shout and scream and not be effective. And you can see what I've been doing for the last 5 or 6 years. Is not just raising awareness, not just getting you educated, but supporting you to articulate and impact and influence. And that's why they're scared of us the most. Not because of what we say, not because of what we do, but because of what we say and do and how it affects them. We mobilise. And there's a chance here to mobilise on the 12th of December 2024 because Andy Burnham's CSE review is a cover-up. And we've shown it to be a cover-up. And in fact, the council has confirmed it's a cover-up. Otherwise, the council would never have written to the government. You're not part of an organisation, are you, Gary? But you might have a question. So you don't have to register straight away. If there's 20 of you, I'm happy to. And then get ping, ping, ping. We'll pin him in such a way he's never been pinned. And he knows. He knows what we can do to him and what we have done to him. He ran away from Royton when he was out knocking on the doorsteps, trying desperately to get people to go out and vote for Amanda Chaddington. I don't mean it disrespectfully. Old women chased him out of Oldham. And we have an opportunity to humiliate him, expose him, and make sure he knows that we are not to be trifled with. It's not often you get an opportunity like this. So that's the mayor coming on the 12th of December. Next point I wanted to raise. So let me just take the time. Yeah, we're okay for time. It's just come up to an hour. Next point I wanted to raise was at the last council meeting, Councillor Lewis Quigg stood up and asked a question of Fida Hussain, who's the business sort of portfolio holder. My understanding is Fida Hussain hasn't got back to him as of yet. The question was to do with the Oldham Evening Chronicle. Now, the Oldham Evening Chronicle is not what it once was. And if the Oldham Evening Chronicle was what it once was, I would not be here. I'm very clear on that. Because the Oldham Evening Chronicle, long before I came along, was holding these people to account, reporting on it, and the newspapers would go into the thousands of people's houses. So it appears, and I've gone and done my own digging based upon the question Lewis asked, it appears the Oldham Evening Chronicle is being blackmailed by Oldham Council. Just hear me out. Just let that sink in. A newspaper, 135 years, 145 years, 135 years, that dates back over a century, is being blackmailed by a council because it is not playing ball. And whilst it's not running with the headlines, it is asking questions in the background that the council, Arood Shah and Shelley Kipling in particular, do not want asked. And these questions are linked to individuals associated with the council, where it appears that palms have to be greased in order for deals to be done. And the council have been made aware and the police have been made aware. And the consequence has been, instead of the council being horrified and launching an inquiry, or the police being sufficiently alarmed to think there's a crime here and going and making arrests, what's happening is the Evening Chronicle and the radio station that's linked to it is being blackmailed, and the council is putting pressure, either withdrawing funding, advertising funding that it has access to, not inviting the Chronicle to events. So for instance, the Chronicle were not invited to the opening of the Egyptian rooms. Maybe Irish Shimmy got an invite, but the Chronicle most definitely did not get an invite. So they're being sidelined, and they're effectively being, I use the word blackmail, by having access to their funding cut. Advertising money. And it goes to, the reason why is because the council-funded Oldham Times, based in Bolton, is more compliant. Of course it is. It's politically aligned. But the Oldham Times, as you say, Gary, it predates the council. The Oldham Evening Chronicle, predates the council. Oldham Times is some fictitious organisation from, typical, isn't it, from Bolton. So what do? Just write to your councillor and ask them to confirm what's going on with the Oldham Evening Chronicle. You should follow the Oldham Evening Chronicle on Facebook or Twitter or wherever it is, and I should follow it as well, because I don't think I follow it. And if it's taken them this long, it doesn't matter. The name, the Oldham Evening Chronicle, has power. In this town, that name has power. And if we can support it, we should support it. And if we can encourage it to find its courage and not run away at the first sign of Arood Shah playing gangster politics, then we should stand beside them. And if we can, we should encourage them to go back to printing once a week, once a month. And indeed, Gary, two-tier Kira isn't new for us in Oldham. Not at all. Yeah. The Chronicle is independent still. I mean, it's independently owned still. I haven't spoken about it, but I have enough of an understanding of it. I think I should now speak about it. The council moved the bonfire from St Mary's, Oldham Edge, to the town centre. In fact, they got rid of the bonfire and just had fireworks, and it became some PR scheme. The bonfire, as it is, was historically held on Oldham Edge, and it goes back over 100 years. And like that, Arood Shah and a Pakistani brand of sectarian politics that demonises the white working class ignored all of that and just moved it to some sanitised firework exhibition in town just before the Christmas lights firework exhibition. Got rid of the bonfire and all of the symbolism of that. Do you agree with it or disagree? It doesn't matter. It's part of our history and we should mark it. And it was held in Oldham Edge because it got people from across the town into one of the poorest areas of the town. So that poor area of the town had something that was its own, that it could stand up and say, this belongs to us, and others came to it. All of that was completely disregarded by Arood Shah, And also the Oldham Chronicle would historically report on the bonfire night. That was taken away from them as well. I didn't say anything at the time because people would think, oh, it's bar humbug, look at him complaining about something else again. What I'm raising with you now is another example of our history and our heritage just being stripped away from us by a council that either does not understand it, most certainly does not value it, and if it did understand it, it wants to make sure that it's taken away from us. And so few people said anything. If I was an opposition councillor or an opposition candidate, there's been a bonfire in Oldham Edge, goes back over 100 years, mate. I've gone and looked. Maybe the council didn't support it, but there's been a bonfire. And the council, picked up on it on Oldham Edge, made it their own, and now have ditched it. And even if it was in Alexander Park where the council supported one, you can see the argument's still the same, can't you? And although the poorest areas of the town, people go into an area that they otherwise wouldn't ordinarily go into, and it encourages positive interaction. But yes, there was stuff in Alexander Park here, and I'm just remembering now, but the bonfire itself dates back to Oldham Edge, 18 something, some of the earliest pictures. And the Chronicle would report on it, but the Chronicle had been sidelined, had access to their funding cut, and it seems they've been silenced. If I was a candidate for a councillor, I would make sure that the sanctity of a bonfire and the symbolism it represents is safeguarded, and the council goes back to a community bonfire and supporting a community bonfire, whether it be in Alexander Park, whether it be in St Mary's. My preference is St Mary's. And if a few people get muddy going to a bonfire and then crying about it, come on, it's a bonfire. That's me done for this evening. I hope you found value in it, and just check how many of us were on. Not many. I think it was about 50 in the end who watched. So that's okay. I'm sorry I can't put the content out for free anymore. It's just not financially feasible. But you're here, you've took value from it, and hopefully you'll continue to take value from it and continue to support me whilst we get through this spell where it's difficult. There's an election, not for 18 months. Those we've supported have betrayed us, and things look bleak, and so many people think, what's the point? Well, if this platform goes and this platform ends, then where will you get the information you need from? And for that, I'm grateful. And please, the 10th, hopefully I'll see as many of you there as possible. Drop me a message to say you're coming. Thank you. And yes, Tony, no better place than the Edge, visible for the whole town. Agreed. For those of you who are watching this afterwards, my name is Raja Mir. This transmission goes out live to a select few, and then it cascades down to people who support me. If you found value in it and you're watching it for free, there is a buy me a coffee link. There's a QR code on the screen right now, and there's a link in the description of the video. Buy me a coffee, or take out a subscription to Redwall and the Rabble. 75 pence a week to you. Absolutely nothing to most people, means everything to me. And if you can't, there's a Patreon page, £1 a month, 25 pence a week. I no longer share my work on Facebook, so if you want to keep up to date, you'll have to join the Patreon page. And if you want the more longer form content, it's on Redwall and the Rabble. See you all soon. Very good night.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.